Now the whole world can acknowledge me.
Kept on giving. Last week I ran out of time for my third question, which I'm glad that I wasn't able to because AEW just gifted me the greatest thing this week. So this week's question, let me bring up this photo because if you see the second half of the title, today's title is More in LA Knight and does Chris Benoit's legacy live on? Before the night that everything happened, Chris Benoit was supposed to wrestle CM Punk for the ECW championship. We all know he didn't show up. So that is what was supposed to happen. Here you see CM Punk with his arm around the kid of Chris Benoit. Eerie ass picture. Like, to me, when I see this, I'm like, oh boy.
So but you're putting the sins of the father on the son.
Not. That's, you see why I'm saying why I'm not going to get in this, because this guy has no discipline. I think if I started talking, he would just interrupt everything I say. So
keep going.
So I'm not going to say anything. So it's an eerie ass picture. I'm not putting the sins. This kid didn't do anything wrong. This kid did absolutely nothing wrong. So I can't blame him for anything. But on June 24th, 2007, the wrestler killed his family, then himself. Chris Benoit's murder of his wife and young son's suicide shocked pro wrestling. And here's my question. What would have happened? What would wrestling had looked like had Chris Benoit not done that?
I don't see much of a change. He would have been... because it was so many wrestlers that wrestle today that were influenced by Chris Benoit. Point blank, period. I've always said Benoit was my favorite wrestler, hands down. So you would have had more of an impact as far as wrestlers that are coming up today, no doubt.
Well, I can't stop looking at Trevor's face with that smirk on his face. I don't know why we have that going on, but now he put the avatar. My God. Anyway, I would echo what MD is saying. It wouldn't have been much change. Maybe he would still wrestle to a lesser capacity, maybe. But it just would have been the biggest change would obviously be that that dark cloud in professional wrestling wouldn't be there. But right. And maybe people that would have gotten the same result would be if it wasn't for Benoit's situation, people down the road would have probably had the same issue if Benoit didn't have that issue. So you're talking about the chair shots. WWE pulled back on a lot of the chair shots to the head. A lot of the different things that will create or cause a concussion, they kind of like pulled back on that. So if Benoit thing doesn't happen, obviously that was a reason for the pulling back on those rules.
I disagree with that.
You think so?
Because CTE was still a thing with and without Chris Benoit.
Right, but the Chris Benoit thing was so huge, it brought a big spotlight.
It was.
Yeah,
but I believe because it was so much of an emphasis on CTE at that particular time. It may have wouldn't happen as sharply as it did, but it was still eventually gonna happen.
Oh, of course, without a doubt. Okay, and it might have even been a worse scenario where more people would have been killed. And it probably would have been an even worse scenario than what we have now. I mean, this is bad. 3 people died. But, you never know what that other scenario could have been. Like that football player took out like 6 people. Player. Yeah. So, you never know. You never know what the end result could have been.
Yeah. I get that point. But like I said, as far as the impact on the industry itself, it would have vastly been a steep contrast in terms of his style versus what other people were trying to do at that particular time. Like I said, it's a lot of wrestlers that wrestle right now that were heavily influenced by Benoit.
Right,
I mean, you can't get around that.
right,
Just like Eddie, just like Dean, and all these guys. Uh, right now in 2023, I think he would be with Dean in AEW producing. That's my opinion. That's where I think he would be. I don't think he would have stayed with WWE, even though
right.
WWE treated him well. Like, I ain't gonna say they didn't, but how I see WWE now versus the type of person I would think Benoit to be, yeah, he wouldn't be there at all. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, of course, I agree with that wholeheartedly too. I think, yeah, he would have been behind the scenes somewhere, if not AEW, then Impact or somewhere else. He would have been doing something else and contributing in a big way.
Yeah. Now remember, woman was trying to get him to open up a school in Atlanta.
Hmm.
Like they had printed up stuff, printed T-shirts and all type of stuff like that. That was supposedly the next move. You know what I mean? So how far that would have went, I don't know, but yeah, then Nancy had put together a whole business plan trying to get him to open up a school in Atlanta. So how long he would have did that, I don't know.
Right, right. But
If he would have did it at all.
right. But the change would have been not as huge per se as far as affecting a lot of people. I mean, it's a huge thing because, of course, they would still be alive. He would be helping people, just like Dusty Rhodes in his older years. He helped so many wrestlers and helped guide and train and develop so many wrestlers. So Benoit would have had that opportunity to go on and do that. But as far as like the question last week with like Magnum TA's thing, I think would have that what if was a bigger hit, I think, to the wrestling world, because I think the whole landscape would have changed. And for everybody, not just for NWA or WCW, I think it would have affected the entire industry. This right here mainly would be those lives wouldn't be lost. He would be able to contribute in society in a better way, and we could have avoided that horrendous act that happened. But it's not as big or large scale in the grand scheme of things as a Magnum TA if his career would have moved on.
Right. Right. And WWE overall, like they could have saved face image wise. Because like
Right,
WWE took a big hit when that
right,
whole thing was going on in the media, you know what I mean?
right. But again,
And
like
right.
no, I was just saying, like I was saying, but then the other part of it is, it brought the attention to CTE, and then it made changes happen that probably helped somebody today or multiple people that we know today that may have been in the same scenario. So you would just not have been one, and then it would have just been somebody else.
I mean, I don't want to be that bleak, you know what I'm saying? What I'm saying is, regardless, even if there wasn't a particular instance in wrestling, WWE would have still went toward no chair shots to the head based on the climate at that particular time when it came to CTE and other sports. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to
You
be
think
bleak
they
and
would have
say
had the initiative to do it?
I think the media in itself or the climate would have nudged WWE to do it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
in the interest of like being suitable, they would have did it because it's WWE. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
They're not going to defy and then just say F you and they don't got that type of image. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I think even without an incident, they still would have went toward it eventually.
yeah.
That's
That's
my
that's
opinion.
the key word. Eventually, could be 1 year or 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the time may vary, but eventually they would have did it just because of the climate at that particular time. What's up, Trevor, man? Like it ain't we ain't arguing, ain't no big deal.
So
Exactly, exactly.
so I'm sitting back here. I'm just sitting back here enjoying the conversation, actually taking my mental notes of what I do want to interject because I kind of agree with y'all. And so here's my quick thoughts about this, because now the more I had time to process this, every time you talk about this, it always gets all touchy feely. So I'm the guy. I'll never. Okay, we're gonna say CTE. We know the whole CTE thing, but I still will never absolve him for what he did. But I'm about to say something that nobody probably ever thought that they would ever hear me say. Had this not happened, because I'm looking at it, I'm going backwards now. Had this not happened, I think more people would have been dead. Just because this was the first time in pro wrestling that it forced the largest company in the world to just halt. And because now it's not like everybody wasn't looking at them like, oh, it's that pro wrestling thing, who cares about this? Now you're looking at somebody that's directly your former champion, somebody that won your title on your biggest show of the year. Now you have somebody that's attached to one of the most heinous crimes in wrestling. Had this not happened, the chair shots would have still been going on. Remember, they didn't get rid of the chair shots. They didn't get rid of the chair shots to the head until after this happened. They were still doing that. So imagine this not happening in 2007, and they would have still been hitting guys in the head with the chair shot, because the NFL knew that this was going on, but it was like a thing, like a hush hush thing in the NFL. They weren't finding out about it until after the guys died. Whereas with wrestling, Chris Nowinski came out and said, hey, I want this guy's brain because I need to see, I want to examine it. I want to see what's going on. I think that had this not happened, as much as it pains me to say, and I hate to say this, I think the casualties would have been more. Probably not in that heinous way, because I feel like, okay, even if I was going to say that CTE played a 50% role in it, I'm still saying that there were other factors that attributed to the act of it, not just because when you off somebody because you're just mad, just a quick mad, you just get rid of them. You don't strategically plan it and do all that, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying that he had this not happened, just think about Wrestler X going another 10 years of unprotected chair shots to the head. And then one day Wrestler X just goes crazy and shoots up everywhere. Or you have more than one wrestler. Look at Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan said that he wrestled with concussions so much because they just didn't know about it. It was a thing that they just wasn't, they just wasn't checking. They didn't know the symptoms in his earlier stage of the career. He's been wrestling. He was wrestling when Benoit was alive. So all this stuff, how many concussions have these guys had? Venkat, we did a show where you showed on the independent circuit, people getting dropped on their heads and like indie wrestling. How many of those guys before they'd be like, oh shit, I got a headache. Now they're like, no, man, we got to get this checked out. We got to make sure that you don't have a concussion. Whereas had this not happened, they'd be like, oh man, sleep it off. That's what they was telling the guys in the NFL. Oh, it's just a position that you play. Don't worry about it. It'll go away. Sleep it off. Take this. You'll be good for the next thing. I think it forced WWE to change the way it forced them, because they wouldn't have done it otherwise. Because let's not, I love WWE, but let's not paint them like they're the moral police and they do stuff proactively. They don't. They didn't implement those new drug testing policies until Vince was on trial for the steroids. Vince always knew that they were taking steroids. That wasn't anything new.
Yep.
That wasn't anything new that was going on. He did it because he got caught. He said, "Oh well, damn, I'm getting caught now. Let me get rid of British Bulldog. Let me get rid of Ultimate Warrior. Let me put the belt on Bret Hart now. Let me put Ric Flair in a featured spot now, because they're smaller wrestlers." He didn't want to do that. He did it because they forced him to do it, because now he was in the spotlight. So had this not happened, the casualty number, I believe, would have been so much higher. I hate to say it, but the casualty number would have been so much higher. You just now start seeing people starting back to do the flying headbutt, which I hate.
Yep.
And
It doesn't make sense.
Benoit wasn't even the first person I saw doing that. Bam Bam Bigelow was doing that. But I hate the flying headbutt. But Bam Bam Bigelow kind of did it with his chin. Huh?
Dynamite.
Say that again?
Dynamite.
Oh, yeah. Oh, damn. Why did I forget about him? Yeah, Dynamite Kid. Yeah, he used to hit you with his head. But Bam Bam Bigelow was doing it with his chin. But, but Benoit was hitting you with his head. You see Brian doing it. You see, for some reason, they're allowing Chad Gable to do it now, but he doesn't hit you straight with his head. But that's a move that they should just get rid of. Because
it doesn't make sense. I think you're hurting yourself more than your opponent.
Yeah, that's a terrible move. It looks good, but it's a terrible move. And Nancy and Daniel didn't have to die, and now you have this kid. Think about this, because I always talk about the legacy and what you leave to your kid. Here's a kid now who grew up, who saw his dad being a big time wrestler. We're not talking about just some little run of the mill guy. This guy was WCW champion. This guy was WWF champion. This guy was probably was the ECW champion, but this guy's just been champions all over the world, wrestling Japan, wrestling Mexico, wrestling Canada. And now here you got this kid spitting friggin' image of his dad, a license to print money. You could put him in his dad's tights. You could shine him up real good, give him a mean crippler gimmick, and this kid would just go to the top. This kid could run any small promotion right now, but he can't do it because we can't see past. All when we do is look at him, is we look at it, that's Benoit's kid. Can you imagine if Jeffrey Dahmer had a kid, upstanding kid?
Yeah.
But because who his dad is, you're looking at him, you're like, that's Dahmer's kid. Maybe he's just a chip off the old block.
Relatives of Hitler, they changed their last name.
Exactly, because not that they're bad people, it's just that the stigma of who they're related to. So I think and the fact too is because this happened, wrestling was it just exposes wrestling for being the terrible business that it is that had this not happened, you wouldn't have made all these health changes. Had this not happened, you wouldn't have given these guys some time off when they get dropped on the head. Had this not happened, you wouldn't see companies banning pile drivers and chair shots to the head. Why in 2023 anybody is still taking an unprotected chair shot to the head is beyond me. It doesn't look as good when WWE hits you on the back, but you know what? Those guys go home safe every night. You know what I'm saying? That you gotta attribute. It is not all, because I believe eventually changes would have been made because you just get smarter in medicine. But in the immediacy, this crap was changed because of what happened. And I think had it not happened, we would have seen a whole bunch more casualties. And this is killing me to say this because I don't, the stuff that I said about this guy, man. So I'm not pulling back anything because I don't want what I'm saying to come off like I'm making him a martyr. So I don't want that to sound like that he basically died for the cause. Had he not died, then the wrestling world wouldn't have been as good as it is now. No, I'm saying he died and in a shitty way, and it forced the wrestling world to be that way because they would have not taken such a close look at what's going on, man. You remember, what was it, 1999? The Rock hitting Mankind in the head 18 times.
It was vicious, man.
Think about
his kids and wife were in the crowd.
Think about that. Think about that. You getting hit in the head with a chair. You can't throw your hands up. You can't do anything.
No, because you got your handcuff. He's handcuffed with no protection.
They thought that shit was okay. Because you got the owner of the company on tape oh, man, we gave him a good show. I hope they realize, we gave him a good show. Why you got this guy with a 2-inch gash in the top of his skull?
Yeah.
So can you imagine had this not happened and they were specifically putting the eye on head trauma? they would still be doing this. You still have people being thrown off the top of cages. You still have pile drivers on the floor. You still would have had all this. I don't care. I keep telling you, man, it gotta feel like I'm caping for this dude, but I'm not. I'm just looking at the industry on the whole. It changed drastically. Like, look in the NFL now, because look at Tua. Tua has a custom made helmet now.
Yep.
Tua has a custom made helmet. Tua had to take judo lessons so he could learn how to fall to protect himself. Can you imagine? And I'm gonna land my plane right here because we got 10 minutes. I want y'all to get in. I know I was gonna be talking this long.
Keep going.
Can you imagine? Think about this. 1980s, 1990s. I'm telling any NFL quarterback X, hey, go take fighting classes so you can learn how to fall so you don't rock your head. Man, them guys would have cussed me out and probably kicked my ass. But what happened with Benoit forced them to look at these things totally different. And I'm glad that AEW is banning pile drivers, because I saw a picture of a AEW show where a guy was sitting too low and got dropped right on his skull. And wow. It's not good when you're going home and you 30, 40 years old, you're making all this money. You're supposed to enjoy the prime of your life, but you can't because your damn brain is scrambled eggs.
Yeah.
It's not a good feeling. I've had a concussion before. It's not a good feeling when you can't see, like your vision is all messed up and you had these ridiculous headaches. I know what that thing feels like. And that was one. It took me only to get one to know I didn't want it again.
Don't like that one.
These guys are living through this. When Daniel Bryan turned on the Wyatt family, he said he didn't remember half of it. It was the loudest reaction he ever got in his entire time in WWE. He didn't remember half of it. Because you know why? Because he was on top of the cage with a concussion.
Wow.
And they didn't know at the time. But when they found out, Triple H immediately pulled him off the road to where he wanted to fight Triple H. And he was like, you're not going to take my moment from me, because he knew the plans. They were shining him up to go to Mania to take the belts. And he was mad. He was like, no, you're not going to take my moment from me. He was squaring up trying to fight Triple H, because Triple H is like, damn, I watched one of my coworkers die to the same shit. And now here I am trying to protect you from yourself. And the main thing, what Chris Benoit did, as heinous as it was, is protecting these wrestlers from themselves. Yep. How many times me as a 43-year-old regular ass working man, I go to work hurt. I go to work with some back pain sometimes where I know I should stay my black ass home, but I do it because I need protection for myself sometimes. And that's Arthur saying the Hell in the Cell, Mankind and Undertaker, bro, they were throwing, he threw him head first off the cage. Like, can you think about it? Why Mankind immediately should have been checked for, they kept the match going. The first one they said was planned. It was the second one that wasn't planned, and they lowered the damn cage and kept it going. The man was wrestling with his brain scrambled. You can't do that. All the times where I was seeing all these wrestlers going on, and I'm like, yeah, y'all just using this moment to pile on Vince now. Vince obviously couldn't take the blame for what happened with Benoit that night, but Vince would damn sure have to shoulder all the blame had he not been forced to make changes and then not heeded to the changes, because he still didn't have to heed to the changes. But fortunately,
which is a problem, because the government should make their ass have to do. You're supposed to set the rules.
Oh, there go MD.
Hey, the government should have a certain set of rules that you have to abide by. You should not be dependent on a promoter that's money hungry motivated on profits to decide, okay, we're going to do right by the wrestler. You know they're not. So the rules are supposed to be set by the government instead of the friggin' corporations or the company or Vince McMahon, the businessman, because they're not going to care. They just here for money and that's it.
Get them, MD. Get them, MD.
No. I just said, like I said, this ain't the place for that. I'm not gonna do it.
No. The argument, no, y'all can argue. I'm talking about me and Venkat. You, because I know you're gonna say, what's your thoughts? How can you tell a private entity because they were still private at the time, correct?
Yeah,
I think they were public. They were public by that time.
What were they publicly being traded?
Yeah. Because they did the IPO in '99.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't matter if they're private or public. Like Dusty says, public. Doesn't matter if they're public. It don't matter. The only thing that matters is that we need to set a set of rules that we all can have sensible rules to help protect people. So you don't manufacture food and have toxic waste right next to food because there's regulations. And without those regulations, you shouldn't be able to operate a business because it's not right. It's not safe. So if you got moves or things that you're doing in the ring that could be counterproductive to life, and you're not following the regulations, you should be shut down. And I think that's the way it should be.
Wow. So the individual person, they not cognitive enough to come up with their own decision as, hey, look, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I'm not gonna do it.
Did Cactus Jack do that? Mankind, did he have the best judgment in that Hell in a Cell? He kept it going. Even you watch videos right now. He said when that Undertaker hit him at one point and he slowly fell to the ground. He was like, the lights were on, but nobody was home. I mean, he didn't stop. The guy's in the heat of the battle. He has all this adrenaline going. He just
so they're not cognitive enough. Then is what you're saying.
I am definitely saying that. I think that we should agree on a certain set of rules to abide that we avoid these things. You can get your entertainment without people going to these extremes. It's not necessary.
Hey, let me tell you this. Hey, okay. That's not gonna work for me, brother. Hogan was a master at it. So basically, you saying Hogan was cognitive enough to say, "Hey, look, I'm not doing that."
Yeah.
So from that aspect, yeah, I got to give you pushback because any person that has that particular effect or is they may be looking like weary at a certain thing, don't do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So from that aspect, I could totally get it. So and going back to like mixed martial arts and boxing.
Okay.
Clinically speaking, a knockout is a concussion. Clinically speaking.
Yeah.
So how are we protecting them?
Well, they
had to sit out for 3 months.
Exactly. The difference
from a knockout.
Yeah. If you get knocked out, Bones is in the chat. He'll confirm it, but you got to sit out like 3 to 4 months.
Right, and they don't box or kickbox or wrestle as often as wrestlers do. You know, you get an injury, and as soon as you're available to go, they're right back into it. And they wrestle out of 365. They wrestle 300, 250. They wrestle a lot. There's a lot more opportunities for a lot more damage. Whereas UFC fighters are once a year, twice a year. If you're really feeling lucky, 3 times. That's a lower mark. In football, it's a way shorter season than the NBA. It's shorter than the Major League Baseball. It's not the
Yeah, but
opportunity is
Venkat, no,
small.
you're gonna die on that hill with that one because
I'm not dying. I'm not on the hill.
a 17 week NFL season is much more grueling than NBA
No,
or
it's not.
hockey or
No, it's not.
baseball
Tell
or
that
anything.
tell that to
Wow,
guys that land on their ankle and it's twisted and mangled.
Venkat, you're in a car crash every play.
No, you're not. No, you're not. And remember, you have different players for offense, different players for defense. They're
MD,
playing
you
half the
played
game.
football, correct?
Huh?
Yeah, I
What
did.
position did you play?
I was fullback, and I did a little bit of running back tail.
So you touched the ball almost as much as the quarterback, and you got hit by at least 5 guys every time. And you
Yeah,
play fullback, so
yeah.
you
I
were the
was
lead
half and half,
blocker.
but I love blocking.
So
I was
you were
lucky
the
to knock
lead
your ass
blocker,
out of it.
MD.
Yeah.
You were the lead blocker for the running back, so you got hit on every play. And you mean to tell
I
me?
did the hit.
Well, but it doesn't matter. But you don't
Okay.
think that that's more dangerous than a baseball season or a basketball season?
I was wore out from 2 of days, and now the season didn't even start yet.
So
I was sore as hell before
approximately
the season even started.
how long is a football game? It's about 2 hours, right?
Something like that.
Yeah, real time.
So then, like, who do we know? Like, who had the most? Did they even keep track of like the minutes played? Like in the NBA, they look at like your minutes that you're averaging. Do they do that in football?
Nah,
I
you
They
I
don't do
get
that.
your point, Venkat. I get your
yeah,
point.
Venkat, but that doesn't work. Venkat, you
It,
can't
wor-
do that.
it works
No,
exponentially.
that doesn't work.
Venkat,
It works.
you talking about impact. You talking about impact the body. Now I give you,
Impact on the knees.
yeah, I give you
That's
basketball
the definition of basketball. You're up and down, jumping down on your knees, on your ankles.
body wise. You got a point.
Have you seen LeBron James' toes?
Yeah, but
It's not pretty.
again, Venkat, we're talking about a game that okay, who in the NBA, and I don't know. I'm asking this question because I really don't know.
Okay.
Who in the NBA do we know suffers from CTE in the NBA?
Well, in the NBA, they're not hitting each other in the head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pertaining to what we're talking about, the NFL is the most brutal thing you can do.
Wrestling is way more dangerous, especially 90s style wrestling.
But wrestling is more protected because it's more scripted. The NFL,
That script has nothing to do with those hits.
Venkat, when you talk about a receiver going across the middle, not seeing the safety coming up behind him, bro, like it's a I don't know, because you were a wrestler, you never played football. I played football in high school for a year. I know what it's like to get hit. That's not a fun feeling to get hit.
I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying the season is way short and the amount of time you play is way smaller.
But you know
that's
season,
what.
You know, football is damn near a year round, though, right?
It's not year round.
They only take about, in real time, they only take about 2 months off. The season starts in September, but they got to report to camp next week or this weekend. You know that, right?
Well, that part is practicing and whatnot. That's different than I'm talking about in game. Because you can say the same thing for the basketball, right? The Nuggets just won the championship last month. Their training camp is going to start towards the end of next month.
You got to understand, like, we in full pads by July. You know what I mean?
I'm telling you, man.
Two a days, bro. You're not ready. 2 a days, you were sore before the season even started. Well before the season even started.
I'm just saying, you got a unprotected head taking a chair shot versus a guy with a helmet on. Now, I understand that the brain rattle.
Now they got rid of that now. So okay, back in the day, you had a better argument when they were still doing it. They got rid of that now in the big leagues. They got rid of that.
I would still say no though, Trevor, because the technology and helmets wasn't there at that time.
Well, yeah. Hey, some people didn't even have a face
But
guard.
when
They had that one
right.
bar.
Oh
Even
Lord.
even when I played, like we didn't have that much pad in our helmet. You know what I'm saying? Like the helmet that my sons use now, they feel like pillows compared to what we had. You know what I mean?
Grandcat, they gave Tua. I follow Tua. That's our quarterback. He gonna lead us to the Super Bowl. Tua's helmet is one of a kind. They custom made this guy's helmet like from all the top designers because of his concussion. He had 2 concussions in the season. Because they aren't taking any chances with him. We're talking about your brain scrambling.
I get that.
Show me an NBA player that suffers from CTE and show me an NBA player that did what Chris Benoit did because of the CTE. You can't find it.
I get that part. I understand that part. That's the reason I don't agree with it. I think it's a nonsensical game as far as bumping into each other like
You
that.
just don't like he just don't like football. That's
I can't stand
I
football.
knew that's what it was going to come to. He just don't like football.
The premise makes no sense.
It's fantastic. It
does not make sense at all.
Not a thing better than football.
Yeah, please.
Man, that I will say this conversation went a whole hell of a lot more cordial than I thought it was.